Good day, grade 6 pupils. Let's learn together the different parts of the heart and their functions. Are you ready to learn? The heart is the organ at the center of the circulatory system. Your heart is a muscle. It is located a little to the left of the middle of your chest, and it is about the size of your fist. The heart is a hollow organ, and it is divided into 4 chambers, 2 ventricles and 2 atria. Inside the heart is divided into 2 sections. You have the right and the left section, and these 2 sections is divided by a septum. Okay, this is a thick wall that divides the left and the right section. The right section here carries oxygen poor or deoxygenated blood, and the left side here carries oxygen rich or oxygenated blood. Oxygen rich and the oxygen poor blood are kept apart. We have 4 chambers of the heart: the upper part and the lower part, 2 atria in the upper part or the upper chambers, and 2 ventricles in the lower chambers. Upper chambers, you have the left atrium and the right atrium. In the lower chambers, you have the left ventricle and the right ventricle. They are separated by a septum. Again, there are 4 chambers inside the heart: the right atrium and the left atrium. We also have here in the lower chambers the right ventricle and the left ventricle. The chambers of the heart have different functions. The atria collect blood that enters the heart, and the ventricles pump blood out of the heart. Take note that the different colors indicates a type of a blood that it carries. The blue indicates the oxygenated or oxygen poor blood. The red indicates, carries oxygenated or oxygen rich blood. This is the superior vena cava. This is the superior vena cava. It brings deoxygenated blood from the body to the heart. Veins from the head and upper body feed into the superior vena cava, which empties into the right atrium. The right atrium here collects the oxygenated blood that enters the heart from the vena cava. This is the right atrium. Tricuspid valve here. This is a valve. Tricuspid valve opens to allow blood to flow from the right atrium to the right ventricle. The valve, the tricuspid valve, prevents the backflow of blood from the right ventricle to the right atrium. Again, tricuspid valve prevents the backflow from the right ventricle to the right atrium. Right ventricle. It pumps the oxygenated blood to the lungs via the pulmonary artery. Here is the pulmonary artery. Again, right ventricle pumps the oxygenated or oxygen poor blood to the lungs via the pulmonary artery. This pulmonary artery carries the oxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. Now, this pulmonary artery will bring the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. the pulmonary artery that carries the oxygenated blood to the lungs. Now, the oxygenated blood is being exchanged into oxygenated blood in the lungs. Now, from the lungs, it will now enter, the oxygenated blood will now enter here, pulmonary vein, red in color because it is already oxygenated or oxygen-rich blood. Left atrium collects oxygenated blood from the lungs through the pulmonary vein, okay, and gets inside back to the heart. This is a mitral valve. It opens to allow blood to flow from the left atrium to the left ventricle. This mitral valve here prevents the backflow of blood from the left ventricle to the left atrium. Left ventricle receives oxygenated blood from the left atrium via the mitral valve and pumps it through the aorta. So from the left ventricle going now to the aorta. This is the aorta, largest artery in the body that takes oxygenated blood from the left ventricle to the body. It passes through here the oxygenated blood. Okay, as you can see, it will now distribute the oxygenated or oxygen-rich blood to the different parts of the body. So let's have a review. Our heart has 4 chambers: right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. The right side carries the oxygenated blood and the left side carries oxygenated blood. Now this is the superior vena cava that collects the oxygenated blood from the upper part of your body, and then it is collected inside by the right atrium, passes through the tricuspid valve and to the ventricles, right ventricles. Then the blood is carried by this pulmonary artery, carries the oxygenated blood to the lungs, so that the oxygenated blood will be now exchanged with oxygenated blood and enters here in the pulmonary vein. And this pulmonary vein, the oxygenated blood is now received by the left atrium, passes through a mitral valve and to the left ventricle, then to the aorta, and this oxygenated blood will now be circulated or distributed throughout the entire body.